This is, we're covering a couple weeks here. So this is week 7, and we're going to cover a day in week 8. Okay? Or thereabouts. Routing and switching. We should be able to configure a switch and the basic security in a switch. Did some lab work, got started on VLANs, and the VLANs we ended up using one lab and then a combination of things that we did together in class. Okay, talk a little bit about AWS. We might be offering some coursework from AWS in the future. Friday we had Unreal Engine and game design, and the big thing there was object-oriented programming. Getting a little bit of an idea how that works. Softball project, pitching, location, batters, count. We've got some people interested, and we've got some things going with that. So we'll hit that hard after spring break. Talked about VLANs. Okay. Big thing here, we have the access layer. How do people access our networks? Okay. What we can do is we can have people access and put them on different VLANs. For example, here I have a VLAN 10, a VLAN 20. This PC might be staff, so they're on VLAN 20. This might be a laptop connected. You can plug it in, and that's a student on a VLAN 10, let's say, for students. VLAN 20 might be for staff. You can even do it with Wi-Fi. You can have somebody based on the SSID, and they can connect to an access point via, so they connect in, and they can be put on, let's say, a guest VLAN. VLAN information then is moved between trunks. So the frames get tagged the VLAN number, so then when you reach the other switch, it knows which VLAN it belongs to, using a protocol encapsulated in .1Q. Same thing here for a trunk. Okay. So, does that make sense? Same thing's going to be true. We can, let me do it this way, we can trunk here, here, and then when, if we're going to send it, let's say, up to a multi-layered switch, it can get trunked. We can have a trunk here, which also marks the VLANs. When they get into the multi-layered switch, in there, then we can route between VLANs, because each VLAN is on their own network. 20 would be on a different network than 10. Okay, like over here, the guests are on a different network than other traffic connecting in. Okay, so we can route between VLANs. An example would be, let's just do it, let's say a staff member needed to communicate with a computer that's connected to the students. It would be possible to trunk, go all the way up here, and then when it comes back, it'll be tagged with VLAN 10 to go here, based on getting routed here. One other item here, we talked about connecting here. We also need to remember we can connect in using some type of data plan if you're going to the internet. We did some work. Show interface trunk, interface brief, show VLAN brief. we set up 3 VLANs, put some devices on, and then we set up trunking in between the switches. And we did that in class. We kind of adapted one of the labs from the Cisco curriculum. We'll keep going. Week 8, Monday, day 14. We're right at halfway in the course. Talked about evaluations, what we're going to be doing, VLAN, InterVLAN routing. We did a lot of work on VLANs, and then right at the end of class we did some InterVLAN routing. Unit exams, students have to schedule that with me. The skills base, the next skills base is going to be after spring break. Okay, that's probably good. Yeah, we've got a kind of a nice skills base that's going to pull together some of the routing and quite a bit of the switching. We looked at an example here, a little bit of review. My emphasis was some of these items are not that difficult to do. We talked about router RIP, version 2, set the network, set passive interfaces, no auto summary. And depending if you were going to distribute the default route back into the network. If you can't remember it, you need to have either write it down. Okay? Yeah, for example, if you're running router RIP in this scenario here, this router could distribute its default gateway out to the internet, to the other routers here. And then we talked about load balancing. I think a student asked. We can load balance out between 2 connections. An unequal load balancing would be if, for example, this pipe, your bandwidth was really big and this one was really little, you're going to want to send more traffic this way and less traffic this way. Okay? Now, when using router RIP version 2, when we say network, 2 things happen. First thing is we're going to advertise our routing table out that network, okay, and that network is going to be advertised. 2 things happen. This network will be advertised, and that interface that it's connected to, it'll send updates out of. Now, we want to advertise our LANs, let's say, but we don't want updates to go out because there's no routers to update out there. So what we can do is we can set a passive interface. We can set that on our LAN connections. So updates are not going out. Right? So this is really it. There's not that many things, right? Router RIP, version, set your networks, passive where you need it, no auto summary, and if, in this case, if you're a router that you need to distribute, you can use that default information originate, or whatever the syntax of it is. Okay. Now we started here working more specifically with multi-layered switch and then our other switches connected. So in between here we should have a trunk here, a trunk here, so the VLAN information can be passed between them and a trunk here. Up here we'll do the routing. So devices on different VLANs, well, let's just say we have one VLAN here, one VLAN here. Okay, so we got, let's say, a PC on VLAN 10, so let's say this is 10, this is 10, and then, I don't know, let's say this one's 20. Maybe we have one over here on 20, maybe here on 20. For those to communicate together, I can do it. They would send their traffic. Traffic would have to go up to the router where it would get routed and then sent back. Okay? So remember, it gets tagged between here so it gets on the right VLAN. So these devices, any devices out here, default gateways would point up here. So if a device from 10 needed to go to 20, okay, it would, that information would travel up into the router, okay. The router would route it, and so now if it's going to this network on VLAN 20, when it leaves, this trunk will tag it as 20. So when it gets to this switch, it can go to the 20. Wednesday. Just think. Wrapping up here for spring break and midterm. Routing, switching. We reviewed some of the, briefly, course materials. This was due, but it wasn't in the modules, so students, you don't need to complete that before midterm. We did a full day's work of VLANs and InterVLAN routing. And, this is really important, the student needs to come in and take the Unit 2 evaluation. I believe that's chapters 1 through 5, something like that. That needs to be done by the 7th, Thursday, by the end of the day. So we did a couple examples. We talked about inside the multi-layer switch, you turn on IP routing, and then you set the switch virtual interfaces. You can go interface VLAN 10, give it an address. 20, give it an address. And you can just keep continuing that for however many VLANs you have. Now, we connected from our multi-layer switch to a router. What we did was, if you're doing that to a router, those have to have IP addresses. It has to be on a network between there. You know, every port on a router is a separate network. So you can say a no switch port for that port, and then you can give it an IP address. So what we did, just curious, we did an example. I'll show you the example we did together in class, and then the students went and designed their own example here with this layout, and that is still available. That's available. I did not delete that or change it. Okay. Now, what we did leading up to that, we did this example together in class. I followed up, and this work is still there. I didn't delete any of it. The only thing that's missing is routers not configured right now. But you could still see how the VLANs talk to each other. We had the addresses, they put workstations on, and they were able to get out to the internet. This was the addressing in between. And we did NAT, converted all of these addresses. We had a default route going out and a static route going back in. Alright, that is it.